I got a story to tell. In 1963, just weeks after the assassination of John F. Kennedy Jr., there was another story that took place that later on in history kind of get almost forgotten about because it was overshadowed by the assassination of JFK. This story involves the son of a Hollywood elite, a ransom demand, and a story that pretty much belonged in Hollywood. This is the story of the kidnapping of Frank Sinatra Jr. Now, Frank Sr. was a cultural icon. He was at the peak of his career in the 60s, and his influence stretched from the Hollywood elites to the most powerful circles. And this kidnapping kind of threatened the life that he built. You know, his son at the time was 19, Frank Jr., and he was starting his own music career. But he found it hard to get out of the shadow, which was immense, obviously, of his father. The time period was the 60s, right? So there was a lot of glamour going on, but it was a time of change and some turbulence in America. It was the 60s. Vietnam War, civil rights, and again, JFK just got assassinated. Now, Frank Jr. was performing in Tahoe, Nevada, and two men dressed in delivery uniforms knocked on the door. These two men were Barry Keenan and Joe Amsler. Frank Sinatra Jr.'s friend opens the door and they bust in. His friend is in a panic. Frank's confused, but these two guys are just carrying along like a bunch of amateur villains, you know? Really had a calmness about them that really struck them weird. At any rate, they snag up Frank Jr., they blindfold him, throw him in the back of a car, and they took him all the way back to California to Canoga Park, LA. Now, while he's captive, a third person contacts Frank Sr. Now, that person was John Irwin, the architect, the mastermind. John Irwin was 42 years old. He was the boyfriend of the mother of Barry Keenan, former house painter, really fell on some hard times and got the idea to kidnap Frank Sinatra Jr. from other ransom cases that he's seen. So he calls Barry Keenan. Barry Keenan was an intelligent dude. He was the youngest person on the Los Angeles Stock Exchange at 21, really ambitious. He made some bad choices. He got hooked on some painkillers due to a car accident, and he figured this would be a way to make some fast money. Joe Amsler, former boxer, was really the muscle, and he was Barry Keenan's like right hand man, right? Whatever he did, said Joe Amsler would do. So back to John Irwin. So John Irwin really organized this. So he contacts Frank Sinatra Sr. He demands $240,000 in cash, which is roughly like 2.5 million today. Sets up the drop off. And Frank Sr. is obviously in a panic. He doesn't know what's going on. He's frightened. He calls the feds. The feds come in. They tap the phones. They organize the money. They do everything that the kidnappers ask, and they go and make the drop. A couple days later, they release Frank Jr. And Frank Jr. was relatively unharmed. He was kept was kept handcuffed or bound rather throughout the whole ordeal, but he was relatively unharmed. He was in good condition. What was the turning point here? It's not really a huge turning point. John Irwin just got scared. He felt guilty. He started to panic, and he decided to turn himself in. So he went to the cops and said, I kidnapped Frank Sinatra Jr. Now, with his confession and the fact that they gave the kidnappers, Joe Amsler and Barry Keenan, marked bills, made it pretty easy. Also, when they dropped off Frank Sinatra Jr. was able to get the license plate. So all the evidence pointed directly to these guys. They couldn't get out of this. They started spending money somewhere in LA, and it pinged. So the cops caught them not too long after that. So they go to trial. Immediately, they're playing this off as if this was like some business transaction and wasn't really some crazy crime. Like they didn't just kidnap somebody. Barry Keenan claimed, I think, insanity too, because he was undiagnosed schizophrenic, but that nothing came to fruition. At any rate, each of them got life plus 75 years. Life plus 75 years. But due to good behavior, Barry Keenan got out in 4, Joe Amsler gets out in 3, and John Irwin gets out in 4 years. I don't know what was going on in the 60s, but that seems wild to me. The story's sensationalized. There's books. There's speculation even that Frank Jr. really orchestrated this to boost his, kind of mediocre career at the time. And, none of that panned out. It wasn't true, obviously. This, this really scared Frank Sr. So much so that for the rest of his days, he carried around a roll of dimes with him just in case something like this happened again, so he could call his family in case of an emergency. Yeah, I mean, it really goes to show, you could be anyone and anything could happen at any time. It's a cautionary tale, Anyway, if you would like this story, subscribe, shoot a like, and turn on that notification bell. I know most of you guys won't. I don't turn on my notifications. I get it. But if you want to, it's there. It looks like a bell. And until next time, be safe. Love y'all.